I have been told by one of my rabbis that the length of someone's introduction should be inversely proportional to the respect you have for that person. In other words, if you go on too long about introducing someone, you are actually kind of not letting them do the talking. So,
Really?
yeah, so I always like that. I always like that philosophy. So rather than going too long into the introduction, I will just say that in roughly the 2 to 3 in-person conversations we've had, um, our stories ended up having a lot of like interwoven connections, specifically around trauma, which is the topic of today. But also, I think not our specific trauma that occurred to us, but more I think about the messages um, that we've gotten through that. And I think one of the best ways to get into that is start understanding who you are. Like, where were you born in Los Angeles? Tell us about
Yeah.
your family. Um,
So I was born here in Los Angeles. I grew up in South Central. Um, I grew up very religious very religious. I grew up Jehovah's Witness. So I grew up kind of in a strict religion where I didn't really celebrate a lot of things. But then I also grew up with another parent, my father, who wasn't Jehovah's Witness. So I kind of saw two sides. I was able to still celebrate Christmas, but then couldn't with my mom. So I just saw a balance of like two different lifestyles. And then also too, I feel like I grew up with my mom's side who were like college educated and went to school. And then my dad's side was more so like hood and like, different things. So I think I have a good balance of like life to where it's like I can go in different rooms and experience different things and relate to a lot of more people because I feel like I've seen a lot of different experiences in life.
uh,
So,
and were your parents together growing up?
yeah, but that was a whole complicated relationship because my dad was on drugs most of my life. So, they were married technically, but um, he would, because of his substance abuse, he would be in and out of my life. He would be here for 2 months, gone for 6 months. So it was never stability. But I mean, I knew that they were married, but not really together.
And like, so, and to me, because I think this will get eventually to where we're going to talk about. I know you have at least one sister because
Yes, I have
you've told
one
me about her.
sister, and then I have a whole bunch of other brothers and sisters that I don't really know like that because my dad had multiple kids. But one sister for sure that is my mom's daughter.
You knew from the same nuclear family.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Was this your whole childhood? Was like this?
Until up until my dad was murdered when I was 16. Yeah.
Okay, so that was the trauma
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
we are going to get to.
Yeah. Oh,
But
sorry.
no. I guess what I'm interested in, because you sort of opened up with your two perspectives on the world.
hmm
Through all this, I'm assuming as a Jehovah's Witness,
hmm
it wasn't really an option for your mother to like remarry. Or did she, was that ever
Yeah.
something that you like spoke about with her or?
Well, I think in any Christian faith or any religion, the option of divorce is like kind of taboo. So even if you're in like a horrible situation, you still have to be married and it sucks. And I think that's another reason why like I felt like whoever I decided to marry, I don't know if I would do those type of like traditions because I feel like, I may be at a different place years from now, or I may not have known exactly who I married at that moment. And
Right.
at some points, I'm like, do I even want to get married? I mean, I do, but I think that it's definitely going to take more time, more, self-discovery to figure out like what does my life partner look like.
And so what was your relationship with your father like? Because you said he's in and out, but like when you would
Yeah.
see him, what I guess, and I know that's, probably very different depending on which
Yeah.
time,
Yeah.
but like because up until 16, to me, it's like probably from 12 to 16, it
hmm
probably changed dramatically. I'm guessing just because
hmm
you are changing dramatically, but I'm just kind of curious if you have a recollection of like how
Well,
you saw it.
I think I feel like I've always been observant and I feel like I've always like peeped things out like, okay, this is what's going on. But I'm gonna keep it real with you. I didn't like my dad. I hated my dad for a long time, and it wasn't until I got older after he passed that I realized that he was fighting his own demons too, and it was like literally nothing I could do about it. I think just seeing what he did to my mom, seeing how he moved with us, I definitely hated him. But then it's like, how do you hate somebody who you know dealt with his issues through substance abuse? Like he felt that was his only way out to cope.
Hmm.
And I think he didn't have the necessary resources to figure out different ways. He also went to prison, so that was another thing that kind of held him back from actually getting a real job. Um, and that could be hard on a Black man in America if you can't provide for your family, you
Yeah.
know?
Is there like a story where you remember dad was cool, and then is there a story where you're
Yeah.
like, dad, you know what I mean,
Yeah.
or just mainly because
Mhm.
I want to get a sense of who he was a little bit,
So
because
I
all I hear is
yeah.
substance abuse is a lot,
Yeah.
there's a lot of different things, and also that's not for you. I think growing up that was probably your definition, but I guess I'm trying to I want to get a full picture as best I can, because then I think that may help us understand what happens,
I think
between now,
yeah.
16 and now.
I think one story I could say, like, this was like maybe like in 6th grade or 7th. I don't know. I think it was maybe 6th grade. We went to Disney World in Florida,
Hmm.
and I actually have footage. We have like a whole VCR tape of him recording the whole trip, and that was like an amazing
Mm.
experience. And then actually, it was so crazy. We took a train from Florida back to LA, which was like, oh, yeah. And we stopped in like Chicago. It was like
Damn.
a long trip, but like just
Damn.
experiencing that was a good thing. And then I think
And what's your age difference between you and your sister?
7 years
She's 7 years
younger.
younger. Oh wow.
I'm the
Okay.
oldest. I'm the oldest out of all the kids, even the kids that are not my mom's.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And then you were gonna get to another story.
Oh, so
Yeah.
the other story, the bad story. Ooh. I got a lot of those. I think one story that always sticks with me and I think affects me was when I told my mom he was cheating on her. And
how old were you?
I was like young. I feel like I was like 7. I don't think I said those exact words like, "Hey mom, dad is cheating on you," but I think I told her like, "Hey, dad took me to this girl's house." And it was like, "Who is this girl?"
Mm.
And he was mad at me about it. And it was so weird. It was just like, "Huh? Like, why would you be mad at me for you doing something that you're not supposed to do?" But then again, as I grow up, I'm like, "Yo, everybody they're humans." And like, I think I had this, unfortunately, I feel like I had this false sense of like, well, your parents are supposed to be superheroes. They're supposed to protect you. They're supposed to be this person. And I think that I had to learn at a young age that it's not like that. Just because they, gave you life,
Right.
they don't really have to take the responsibility of that big task.
They don't always have a degree in like
Yeah.
sustaining life.
Yeah.
It doesn't take much to create it,
Yeah.
but it certainly takes a lot to create.
To sustain it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
to sustain it, and make it thrive.
Yeah.
So, I guess let's get into the actual traumatic moment. Well, yeah, I think we're there, because then I want to talk. It's more about, I think, how it affected each person within your family, and then
Okay.
and then what happened. So, was there your father was murdered, right? So that's like terrible. You were 16 at that point. Where was your relationship with him?
I think the last time I saw him, he was on drugs, and I think my mom had went on a ski trip out of town, and I think I was staying at like my grandmother's house, and he called my mom and told her like, I don't think I'm gonna make it through the weekend. And he
Mm.
literally did not make it through the weekend. I think he
What?
died that Sunday, March 3rd at like 12 a.m. It was some weird number. Like he literally did
Hmm.
not make it through the weekend.
What kind of drugs was he on?
From what I saw from like things that were left around the house was like heroin or crack. Mm-hmm.
And he just, for whatever reason, was feeling like things were going off the rails then more than.
I think also too, like when you live that type of lifestyle, the type of relationships that you have with people can get crazy. And I know from hearing, like my grandparents still live over in that neighborhood, and
Mhm.
like I still, we still have family members that are like still, in the gang life and that type of lifestyle. So I know it had to do with like a money exchange, like where he didn't pay somebody back. I don't know for sure exactly because, of course, with situations like that, police officers really don't take forward the step to actually really figure out who killed the person.
Right.
So we really don't know, but I know from talk from other people that it had to do with like a money exchange.
Okay. And that's basically what you were told.
Mm-hmm.
And how were you told?
I was older. Like it was like one of our cousins, like, and he's like a hood dude, and he just brought it up casually.
So you hadn't seen your dad in a certain amount of
Yeah,
time,
months.
and it's not like you were chatting with him.
Mm-mm. At that time, I mean, we had sidekicks and stuff, but like it was, sidekicks
Yeah,
and
yeah,
like
yeah.
we
I mean,
had
I think when I was 16, I don't know how old you are, but when I was 16, I don't know if I had a phone yet. I might have gotten
yeah,
one just after, like,
yeah.
because I started driving closer to 17.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and yeah, texting was like you had to pay per text or something
Exactly.
like that.
Yeah. So it was different back then. So
Yeah. Okay, so that's awful. How did you feel?
finding out about what happened.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like when it happened, I didn't really grieve the way I needed to because I was trying to be strong for my mom. I think I'm just now getting into that grieving process because I'm becoming a woman. And, I feel like becoming a woman, you do need your father to kind of like guide you. You have your mom, but I think it's a different type of energy that I feel like when you create life, you have both of those in you.
Mm-hmm.
So it's definitely interesting to go through life without him. And I think I'm unraveling that and trying to figure that out.
Interesting. So, okay, so grieving, because that to me is like, it's a huge topic for
Hmm.
me that for whatever reason I actually experienced my first, I guess, like significant encounter with death
Hmm.
when I was 15, and that was
Hmm.
with my brother. It wasn't sudden, it wasn't criminal, it wasn't anything like that, but
Yeah.
it was different. I mean, we shared a room, we had a different relationship, and having that removed was pretty crazy.
Yeah.
And life changing. And then to me, it was, I like credit, I mean, a lot of things, but the grief process
Hmm.
specifically, because you mentioned you grew up pretty religious. I grew up, pretty religious. Still am pretty religious, I guess, whatever that means.
Yeah.
And the grief process is super specific for Jews. And the more traditional you are as a Jew, it sort of reaches like this point where it's very prescribed. And it's
Hmm.
also very hard not to do it, in terms
Hmm.
of like not to get through the process. And I've seen other friends and people and who didn't necessarily either follow that or had their own or lack of,
Hmm.
sort of like framework. And it seems incomplete.
Hmm.
And people are scared to grieve. So what was I'm now curious, like, what did it look like for your family?
Hmm.
How did your mom obviously doesn't have a great relationship with this person at this
Yeah.
point.
Yeah.
She's trying to make it work because of God.
Yeah.
Um, I'm assuming at this point, and maybe now, has she ever? I mean, she hasn't dated
No,
anybody.
she's remarried.
Oh, she is remarried now.
Yeah.
Okay, but
Yeah.
at that point, she wasn't.
No, at that
Yeah,
point,
yeah.
nah.
Okay, you're right.
But
After he's dead. Yeah. Okay.
I think with her grieving process was weird because I feel like she was, well, not weird. I feel like it's natural for a woman to like be sad and stuff, but I think she was able to overcome it pretty quick. I think with my little sister, because my little sister was so young, I think it made her super religious
Hmm.
to where like now she's like, man, I'm like, I was not like this when I was 21. Like I was wild. Like,
Right.
like I was like out here, doing a lot of stuff. And with her, she
She doesn't want to like fall
nah,
off.
I don't even think she's never had a boyfriend. I don't think she's ever had sex. Like she's like by the Bible. But she's still down to earth. Like, she's still, you know.
And she went to Israel, right?
Yeah, she did.
Cool.
But like, she's just like, she's still like normal. She still listens to music, you know, like she's still normal, but she's just very genuine and real when it comes to, you know, having a certain lifestyle with God.
Yeah.
And I think my dad's death helped her to get to that point. I feel like with me, it was more so I had a lot of trial and error. And
Right.
I'm just now getting to a place where I'm like, okay, you know, it's okay. You know, it's all right. You know, I think when you lose a parent, you kind of have this weird way of life that you go through these issues and you don't really have the answers to them.
Right.
Because it's like, even when I deal with men, it's like I don't have the answers to it because I don't have a person that I can actually talk to. Or just in life in general, like I just don't have the answers. And I think that's what I'm working towards as far as like being okay. And also too, when you lose a parent, I feel like it's hard for you to create your own life in the sense of like, what does your life look like? Because, you know, when you have two parents, you look at their life and their guidance and things like that. So for me, it's kind of like um learning to be okay with that freedom and learning to be okay with making my own decisions, you know?
Yeah. Okay. So I want to, you mentioned trial and error. So I want to explore that a little bit because what are the errors? Because I think to me, what I see and the goal of this show is actually to discuss nothing about politics or current events and really talk about human beings as they are. But I do see, without getting even specific or relegated to one side, is like there are a lot of bad errors in our trial and error right now in the public sphere, trying to help bring people closer and more respectful of each other, which I think is always at the forefront of like triumph. So what were some of the errors that I think people who you've seen also encounter and maybe haven't figured out was an error?
I think for me, it's been forgiving. Like, I did not used to forgive like that. I was not like, you know, the person that trusted people like that. I think that was a lot of the errors that I had to deal with that I'm like finally getting out. Like, okay, it's okay to trust people. It's okay to, you know, forgive someone for what they did to you. Also, too, I feel like the situation has taught me to be more compassionate towards people.
So, so first, how did you decide it's okay to forgive? Like, what was that turning point like? And then, with the last point, how did you start to manifest that?
I think it was going through my own issues and wanting people to forgive me.
Is there like a specific? You can get juicy here. Come on. We're on the
okay. I guess I could just say my last. I don't want to be too shallow, but my relationships, wanting my partner to forgive me, but not being open to forgive, like having that guard up of like thinking that, hey, it's about me, when it's like a relationship is about a partnership. And I think that's my biggest thing. And like I said, when you don't have a significant person in your life like your dad, you kind of don't know where to go and how to maneuver with the opposite sex. It's like if you weren't to have your mom, it's like, well, how do I figure out how are women, you know?
Right.
And I feel like I lost my dad at a very pivotal age. And then also, too, I feel like I never really had my dad in my life because he was also absent. So it's like, it's figuring out those things that I feel like for me personally was hard. I feel like I can forgive with my friends and things like that. But I think mainly with the opposite sex has been like very, very hard.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I always, as a straight man, I always say to women, I'm like, yeah, God bless you for putting up with us, because we're not easy. And oh yeah, more merch shout out. My girlfriend bought me this shirt. It's great. Yeah, keep whoever wants to make us look fly on the show. Let us know. We will get to what you're doing soon, because that is very relevant to, again, not the error part, but the eventual triumph of this all.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's really big. I think the forgiveness, and you talked about partnership. So that brings up a point to me that I definitely learned when I was experiencing intense pain, was like, I saw a very, like, there was a moment that was very clear. Luckily, again, like, the grieving process in my world was, you put the body in the ground yourself. You don't, like, no one else does it. You actually have to physically, like, put dirt onto the casket.
Is that a part of your?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. It's part in the Jewish tradition, and then, but everybody actually who is in attendance, like, will usually, like, line up and do it. And then afterwards, the immediate family, like, you sit on a floor, like, even lower to the ground than we are now, and people basically make you food, and they come in, and you don't shower, you cover up the mirrors, and people are there, and you're kind of on display, sort of like we are, and people are just telling stories about, in your case, your father, in my case, my brother, and you are forced to kind of talk it through. The community is forced to also, like, take care of you, so you're not alone. Granted, they're only there for 5 to 7 days, and
That's a long time.
right? But I'm saying you live with it for the rest of your life.
True.
That's what I mean. And so, but
it's
it's amazing.
Good healing process, because
Oh yeah,
I remember my dad died, and, like, my family did a whole photo shoot, like, literally, like the next week, like, a family photo, and my
Right.
mom was like, my husband just died, like,
Right.
why would you do that? So, like, to hear that, I'm like, that sounds like a good idea, because you feel so supported and, like, so, like, loved. I think.
Yeah, no, to me, and because my contrast to that was, I was living in Australia, probably at the worst moment of my life. I was getting divorced, and
Yeah, I forgot you were married.
yeah, I had a really good friend down there who, like, I mean, he looked kind of like Superman. He was Italian. He was just, like, super cut up, like, really. And then I saw him for the first time in about a year, and we had a good time. We went, we were just, like, hanging out, and he was about to leave Australia to England, maybe, where his girlfriend was. He was going to go propose, and he was, like, 23. And I offered to take him to the airport that week, and I was, like, also about ready to leave Australia at the time. And sure enough, my phone, like, blows up that morning, and all of a sudden, my friend Oscar, who was, like, they were like the Twin Towers. They're both, like, these big, goofy, friendly guys. And Oscar, like, texts me, and he's like, Gino passed away. And I was like, what are you talking about?
Wow.
Like, I was like, what do you, and he was diabetic. I didn't even know that, but he had mentioned his blood sugar to me, like, 2 days before. I didn't know that. And so he got into a seizure and died. And he was, like, named, his youngest brother was named Zach, which is same as me. They came to Australia. None of them lived there because whatever, they're expats. And his dad was so broken, and they had no format in which to, like, rebuild. There was, like, it was all emotion, and there was no building blocks or structure to put in to allow that to be a real thing, because you have to feel it. You can't pretend like it doesn't hurt, even with your stunted relationship, because, like you said, now as you've grown up, you realize, even with all the the bullshit. I haven't decided if we swear on this show yet, but but even with all the crap that you go through in life, it's like having anybody as a resource can sometimes be helpful, and then, more importantly, when it is taken away from you in whatever way it is, knowing how to positively bring, some, like, restitution to it. Because otherwise, the worst thing is you just start repeating that same behavior, which made you sad to begin with.
Exactly. And I think that's what I'm actually working through right now, just, like, not repeating the same behavior of because even when I think about it now, I'm like, yo, like, I didn't forgive my dad and he died. So I think I have this, like, blockage of, like, not forgiving men that I have an close relationships with.
Mhm.
And that probably is the sole reason why, because I wasn't at an age where I can have real conversations with my dad. And like, what's going on? Why are you doing this? I feel like I can have those conversations now because I'm older. So it was more so of like, when he would come around, I was just like, why are you here? Like, I wouldn't say that, but I was just
Right.
like, that's how my attitude was. Like, like I wasn't really trying to respect him as a man, because I felt in my heart he didn't deserve respect.
Yeah.
Things like that. So it's funny. I'm like realizing that now. Like, that's probably the reason why. Like, you're subconsciously going through the same cycle because you never had that experience.
Right. And you didn't have the structure when you were growing up.
Mm-hmm.
And then when like the water, when the dam breaks,
Yeah.
you're like, oh, damn, we're like in a little boat,
Mm-hmm.
and it's gonna.
That's so interesting that I made that breakthrough right now.
Good. Traumatically triumphant. All right. So now let's talk about more breakthroughs because I for whatever reason, I like digging in the muck of emotional distress because I think it is where all the great solutions come from. And I think that people should not shortchange it.
Because trauma could be anything, though. It doesn't even have to be death. It could be an experience. It could be a rape victim. It could be something that you go through with your friends. It could be anything that can like make you feel like, yo, like this is crazy. It could change your life. It doesn't have to be a death.
In fact, the next episode we're recording about, like I said, about someone's dad, but who's still alive and totally different trauma, more about like public perception and then inward perception as well, like in a real way. So when I met you and we first spoke, we talked about teaching was like one of the first things I remember talking about. And we both, interestingly enough, experienced death in our immediate family, totally different ways, of course, and then like teaching, but also had other passions. So you are in the fashion world. I'm in the filmmaking world, storytelling business, but education is sort of like, in my opinion, right in between. So was there ever was that always something on your mind? Why did you start teaching? And tell us a little bit about those experiences. Because some of those things I saw were like amazing, really emotional.
I think I kind of fell into it just because like my aunt, she's a superintendent, or she was the chief of staff for LAUSD. So it kind of just happened that way. I think it wasn't until my last year that I was just like, and it so happened to be the 7th year, which I don't know if it has any correlation to like God or like some spiritual thing, but
we'll roll with it. Why not?
The 7th year, it wasn't until I realized like, hey, I need to do something for the community and not just be there. I mean, I worked at rough schools,
So wait, why? Why? Because this is really important to me. Why did you feel the need? Because I feel a lot of people say, I got to do something. You got to do something.
I don't know. It was just something in me that year that was just like, look, like, I think it was my mom. My mom, she was just like, this was rough. My kids would be calling me bees. Like I worked with kids with like behavior issues and stuff like that. So it was really rough. It was like, but I knew that it wasn't me. It was the situations that they were in, like foster care, parents aren't there. Like only times they would have meals would be when they would come to school.
Right.
So it was rough for them. Like a lot of the girls were already having sex. Like, so it was like a really rough situation. And my mom was like, look, you're going to either keep crying about it or be sad, or you can do something positive. And it wasn't until then it was just like click, and then everything just fell into place. And then it wasn't until that year to where it was just like, I did what I needed to do, then boom. Hey, do you want to be a marketing coordinator at Forever 21? Yeah. And I feel like it was God telling me, like, until you realize what your purpose is, I had to humble you for 7 years. So when I got into this industry I'm in, my mindset is totally different than like, okay, this is vanity. Like, this is, this is like, I'm not trying to be the cool person in here. I'm really trying to create change. And whether that's in fashion, whether that's in philanthropy, whether that's in like whatever I'm doing, like I'm really trying to create change. And I feel like it wasn't until that 7th year that it was just like, okay, it makes sense now.
Okay. Nice.
You
So
know?
that brings up a couple things to me
Mm-hmm.
that I think are important because, you know, your mom said, and I think she was totally right. You can be sad about it, you can cry about it, and going back to what you said about
Mm-hmm.
trauma could be anything,
Mm-hmm.
and many people use trauma to say, you don't know what I'm going through.
Mm-hmm.
Don't tell me what I got to do, and that's true.
Yeah.
It is true. We don't know what anyone's going through, but the one thing that I have observed,
Mm-hmm.
and this for spoiler alert to anyone who's going to watch or listen to this podcast, they're going to end relatively similarly because the only possible thing that I ever see as an answer to these terrible, terrible things
Mm-hmm.
or challenging things are coming out of or doing something about it, and not even just for yourself,
Mm-hmm.
but like making sure that the world around you is just a little bit better.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone's got their own way of doing that, of course. And
Yeah.
it doesn't need to be the way necessarily you do it or the way I do it or anyone else. But it to me, not having that is like there's a lot of pain that I've gone through that is just like mind boggling. And it's like if I didn't have that something, in addition to being creative, in addition to doing that, I don't know what I would do.
Yeah. Yeah.
But so you were teaching.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have like one awesome kid or one awesome story or something that you can share about that before we get into now
I
where
think it
you've
was I
where
think it
you've
was
gone
one
to?
kid, Jeremiah. He was kind of like the reason why I started. He came to our school. He was like, you could tell by what he was wearing that I don't want to like because he follows me on Instagram.
But no, but this is constructive. We'll have Jeremiah on the show.
Right?
Was he the kid? Was he the kid you raised money for clothes?
Yeah.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
okay,
And he's a dope ass skateboarder.
yeah.
Like he's so dope to where like, yo,
Hmm.
like he could be like Tony Hawk or best, like better. Like
So Tony Hawk, look out for this kid.
right? But he doesn't have the opportunities. He doesn't
Right.
have the resources. He goes to school in the hood, unfortunately, his family probably doesn't have the resources either. And I wanted to use that as I know a lot of people in the streetwear industry that kind of started in skateboarding as I was like growing and stuff like that. And I was like, yo, let me use my platform to try to help this kid out. So, I took him to a couple of stores like Union on La Brea. I took him to another store on Fairfax, Rip and Dip or Rip something. It's like a
I know.
skater's clothing brand.
I'm not that hip.
And
I'm
like
not
they
that
gave
hip.
him like free clothes. I took him like to go eat at John and Vinny's. Like you should have seen. Like he was
Yeah.
so like
How old
nervous
was he then?
at that time. Last year he was like graduating from 8th grade.
Okay,
So,
so
he was,
that's
like,
that's a pretty great time.
Yeah.
To feel special.
But like even that's like he's never been to Fairfax.
Right.
And it's like, what? He lives like 20 minutes away.
Right.
And it's just like a lot of Black kids in the hood, especially in South Central, they never been outside of South Central. Like some of them never been to the beach. And it's like and that's what another thing that bothers me when people come here. They're like, what is the hood? Like you guys have palm trees. I'm like, yo, the hood is the hood. And people from the hood still haven't seen what really LA and California looks like.
Yeah.
I haven't visited a lot of places in California. And I think
California is huge.
it's huge.
Yeah.
And the fact that Black people have to, or, unfortunately stay in communities for the rest of their lives, it just goes to show you the work that needs to be done.
So that brings me, I guess, maybe to like the message, because
Mm-hmm.
I think that your story isn't just relevant to the people who have gone through the same thing. I think it's relevant to a lot of people, but say that it is relevant to the people that you're talking about now. What's the message that you've been teaching, that you've been acting on, that like you think somebody might need to hear who may be going through a similar, or relatively similar thing?
That's a good question.
Good cut. No, I'm just kidding.
I think the message, I feel like any like little Black girl that grew up in the same neighborhood I grew up in, I think it's okay for trial and error. It's like okay to figure it out. I think when you grow up where I grow up, the options are very limited, especially when you are a creative or you want to do more things in life. You get bombarded with like, oh, get a job at the post office, or like get a job doing, certain things. And I feel like if you have that ambition and goals to want to be greater and be better, I think it's okay to not figure it out the first time around. Because when I graduated high school, um, my whole goal was to like go to FITM. I went to Teamvo University in New York. Like I did all those things, but then it was just like, well, we can't afford to go to FITM. We
Mm,
can't afford to do this. You can't afford to live in New York and just do internships. Like it was things like that that kind of just was like, dang, I have to get a job. My
right.
first job was Barnes and Noble. Like I had to get a job. It wasn't like, okay, I can do this. Like, granted, I feel like my grandparents were well off, but those weren't my parents. So my mom, she's a single parent. She has to figure it out. And it was just like, you got to get a job. So I think for me, to see where I started and to see where I'm at now and to see where I'm going to go, it's like, I'm just glad that I didn't give up. I'm glad that I didn't let my mind make me feel that I wasn't worthy of the things that I really wanted in life.
Yeah, I think that's great. I mean, I think
Yeah.
to me, part of that is like, you got to be prepared for obstacles too,
Yes.
because they're going to happen. And what I find as well, same with trauma, same with
Mm-hmm.
regular obstacles, is like, you can try and define the reason why this particular thing is
Mm-hmm.
causing you a setback. And that may help you,
Mm-hmm.
but it doesn't help you
No.
because you spend so much time trying to identify why is this person there and I'm not, and this and that. And since I moved to
Mm-hmm.
LA, I mean, it's so bizarre, the things that I see, and it's just like, um, but none of that really matters because, you have to like always make yourself better so that other people can see it and
Mm-hmm.
and then also help. But you got to help others. If you don't help others, I think people eventually,
Yeah.
I think no one's going to really care about you after a certain
Yeah.
point.
Honestly,
Um,
for real. And I think if you don't help others, I feel like you lose the purpose of what you're trying to do, because I feel like we're both in an industry where it can be very absorbed, like we can be very into ourselves. And I realized like, yo, like when I'm helping other people, when I'm doing certain things, like all my problems kind of go out the window.
right.
Like when I want to do things for kids in the community or for my community in general, like what I'm going through, like does it really matter right now? And I think people don't really understand that, like especially like people who want the world to change. It's like change in the world means that we have to help each other. We can't just sit around and say like I got to worry about my family, which is fine. Worry about your family, but if you think about the community as a whole, I feel like that's another reason. I think we had this conversation too that I told you. I feel like Jewish and Black people have not the same plight, but like we have the same racism, or like we have the same we have had the
I
same
think we have way
issues.
more in common than
Yes.
we have different.
But
Yeah.
the difference between you guys is that you guys came together as a community to actually say, look, y'all could treat me like this, but I'm going to have the bank account for you to not to treat me like this. And I think with Black people, we have this like, not woe is me, but we have like, okay, I'm struggling, I'm this and that. But like, what are we going to do as a community to bring to change this?
So to me, it's interesting that I think a lot of people have their own opinions, and
Yeah.
I don't want to get into that.
Yeah.
But it is interesting what you said, because I think that on a non-political, even
Mhm.
racial, is you said that you experienced the loss at 16,
Mhm.
but now in your womanhood,
Mhm.
you're actually dealing with it.
Yeah.
So imagine all that time of growth and development
Mhm.
within your own community, a time when teenagers are like when I was in high school, I was doing youth groups. I was doing things that
Mhm.
brought people together. And I went to a Jewish high school, but I had friends, like in my neighborhood was very mixed in Seattle. It's one of the few ones in Seattle that are that way. But so we had all kinds of people in my house all the time. So that was never the thing. But it's like, if all the pain just becomes about you and that there's nothing that you can do with it, well, then you'll be right. You will tell yourself, and if you allow yourself 7 years to not grow, or 10 years, or 15 or 20,
You stay stuck.
yeah, you stay stuck. And then that means that's literally the most pivotal part of most people's lives, is probably 16 to 25, 30,
yeah.
35
I would say
now.
16 to 30.
Yeah, 30, because people go to
25,
grad school and
yeah.
people do, or you start your own business,
Yeah, 25, I was still a mess.
Yeah.
And I'm probably still a mess at 28.
25 is when I restarted my mess, I think, or 26, I think.
Right, we started a whole
yeah.
new mess.
Yeah, so, but no, well, thank you for your time. I wanted to,
thank you.
yeah, that was great. And last thing, selfless promo, tell the world what you're doing now so that they could look out for you, or,
Ooh, I do a lot, but I feel like the main thing that I'm working on right now is my clothing brand, and then Clean Up South Central, where we've had 2 cleanups, and we just clean up blocks, and we donate to charity with whatever donations we get. We donated to Summer Everything, which is an organization that creates organic produce boxes in Watts in South Central, and she just passes them out with donations that she's receiving. And then we donated to Tech Lamert, which is a nonprofit organization in Lamert that gives opportunities to youth to have jobs in tech and and different things in the industry.
Good.
So,
okay, so we should put links to that.
Okay,
yeah.
I'll send it over to you.
Yeah, send me links. And thank you.
Thank you, Zach.
Yeah, thank you, Dime.
Yes.
Thank you, Traumatically Triumphant. Thank you, Pink Cloud Studios. We'll be back with another episode soon.